So another question we found students found a bit tricky in the Catholic Trial 2025 was the common module question. So I think the question probably lent itself a little bit better to some texts than others, but we're going to just take you through, how you would have actually approached this particular question, especially for the texts that were a little bit trickier. So over to you, Lily. How do you, how do you feel students could have approached this one?
Yeah. Okay. So for a lot of texts, this question was quite nice. So the question was evaluate the extent to which your prescribed text illuminates the need for human connection, or the need for connection, sorry. So for some texts like 1984, students really found this quite easy because they could talk about the loss of connection, and that really made sense with Julia and Winston's relationship and how disconnected that society is, and therefore, what's been lost and the loss of the vital human experiences under oppression. But for other texts, for example, The Crucible, this question immediately didn't feel like it was very related to that text. So students immediately kind of interpreted this as it has to be human connection, it has to be relationships. So their mind sort of went to, well, I have to talk about Proctor's connection to Elizabeth or to Abigail, or just the connection between the characters there. So then the essay became very much more about relationships and characters than talking about authorial purpose and bigger themes in the text. Especially if you pre-prepared an essay on something, say, to do with mob mentalities or conformity, suddenly it felt like this question, they couldn't use any of their essay. So what we kind of just want to remind you is that when you see a word like connection, you should really do a bit of a mind map to kind of think about the ways that you can actually interpret that, because your initial thought might not be the only way to interpret it. So when we think of connection, one of the ways that we can approach it is human connection and relationships. There we go. So human relationships. But another way that we can think about it is connection to things. Okay, connection to things or ideas, or even beliefs. Okay, so from there, if we're approaching it that way, we can link this to some of the themes and ideas that you already have in The Crucible. So, for example, connection to justice, truth, personal integrity, morality, all of these things that you can see are sort of lost in the state of The Crucible when the citizens fall victim to mob mentality. Another way to approach it is to think about the human connection that actually happens in the relationships in the text. So immediately this makes us think the human need for connection, that has to be a positive thing. We need love, we need connection to one another. But what if that human connection actually can at times be a bad thing? So in The Crucible, we can see that conformity and the need to belong, the need to feel connected to other people and not to have a differing opinion, the need to be accepted. For John Proctor, for example, he's so scared of losing those connections if he reveals that he's actually committed adultery with Abigail, stops him from acting with personal integrity. So that's another way that you could approach this. You could say that at times the overwhelming need to always feel connected can result in conformity and mob mentality with detrimental consequences. And suddenly you're coming back to some of the main ideas that you had already prepared for your essay. So it's really important that you sit and you really plan a question before you go in to start writing. Do a little mind map off of it. What are the different ways that you can see connection happening in the text? And then don't just go with the first idea. Think about it and think about which thesis actually best applies to the ideas that you already have and makes the most sense to you and is really simple for you to be able to explain.
Amazing. And then once you do that, you'll actually have an introduction that properly answers the question. You don't want to be in the essay starting to put the pieces together and go, oh, wait, hold on, that's how I could have approached it. You've got to work out how your argument, how your paragraphs, your ideas are going to relate to the question before you start the essay. So it's a crucial 5 minutes to, read questions, or 10 minutes for common module. But then of course you've got the comprehension unseen. But really important to start thinking about what are the key words here? How are they connected to your ideas? So that when you actually start your introduction, you're really hitting on that question and getting that real, very sophisticated thesis that answers the question. Because answering the question is just going to be worth more and more marks as time goes on, because they are trying to see who has just come in and memorized something that's either been written previously, helped by AI, like, you know, like who knows their stuff and can actually answer a question under exam conditions, and who has just memorized something or not really understood it. And it is glaringly clear to teachers who those people are. And that's where the more sophisticated your answer to the question is, the higher your marks are going to be. Even if you write something a little bit shorter, but really nails the question, you will get a much higher mark than someone that's written this really sophisticated, polished essay on the Crucible that just really doesn't address the question. It is worth so much. I would say it's probably coming up to like 50% of your marks are really going to be based on that. It used to be probably about 13 or 14 out of 20 that you could get without really answering the question, but that is going to get more, they're going to get more discerning about it, because they really need to see the difference between students who know their stuff and can answer the question and the ones who don't.